Hi everyone, my name is Olin Hodges, and this is my presentation on the client and server sockets topic. Let me go ahead and present to you a very short presentation here. So to start off, what is a socket? All a socket is the endpoint of a connection across a network. Usually they are based off of two protocols, which are TCP, which is Transmission Control Protocol, and then you have UDP, which is User Datagram Protocol. The most common of these is the TCP protocol for reasons I'll show you here in just a second, the next two slides, why TCP is the chosen method over UDP in most cases. One thing that needs to be made clear is that these sockets do not share with other applications. So once a socket is opened by an application, another application cannot come in behind it while the other application is still started. It will usually have a TCP socket bind error that it will receive. What the PC or the server is doing is that any data that is received through that port, it then sends to the one application that is connected to that socket. So the two things I wanted to talk about for TCP in general is the handshakes as well as the connection termination. TCP, long story short, the reason why it's the most used protocol on the internet is because it allows for us to provide best effort across the internet. Packets can get lost here and there across the internet. It's not the best connection for all of us to communicate on. So there are a range of different packet numbers that are given to segments that are sent across the network, so that you can make sure that you've received all the data that the server has sent. So that's why there's these multiple handshakes and different acknowledgments that are built into it. It does take a little bit of overhead. So in the one sense, like UDP would be used for more of a voice solution. It's okay with losing a few packets here and there, but it does not want the additional overhead for all the session tear up or bring up and tear down. So are going to be using TCP. A client will connect to a server on its IP address and its port. It will start that whole scenario by sending a SYN, which is a synchronize. It's basically someone knocking on the door. The server then opens the door and says hi right back with the SYN ACK. And the final part of that handshake is the client then saying that it received the hello from the server with the final ACK. So that data can be sent in both ways. In this diagram, they're showing it being sent from the client, but it can be sent either way. Now, a connection termination is done in the same fashion, but instead of a SYN, it's a FIN. So it's a finalize. So it will send a FIN, then the server will send a FIN ACK packet, and the final client message is an ACK. Then the connection is closed on both sides. So I want to show for this, which is just a very simple, let me close down the server part of this right now. It's just a very simple, basically a time server, a date and time server. This is the server application. It opens up a port on TCP 9090 and waits for anybody to connect to it, which it then sends out current date and time out the port. The client application here will open up a J pane or a swing pane, which is just a Windows window, and it will have, first it will ask you the question of what the IP address of the machine is that's listening on port 9090. Then it will go and read the data and show it. Just close the pane. So in this scenario, you always need to have the server started first. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off the server here. I'm going to show you that you can't have two of these running at the same time. So as soon as this, okay, so it's running. I'm going to try to run it again, and we're going to get a compile error. See, it says address already in use. It's a bind exception. The port's already open. If you look here, we are listening on all IP addresses is what that means on port 9090 for TCP. This is the IPv6 version, so there's two entries here, both for IPv4 and IPv6. So now we can run the client. In this case, you could use the local host, the 127.0.0.1, since I'm running it both on the same server. But I'm going to show you guys that you can use the IP address that I have here on my PC, which is 192.168.1.101. Set that up. 192.168.1.101. Click OK. And here's the time that it returned. It hasn't closed the connection yet because if you look here, you see I have a connection from myself to myself on port 9090 with my source port being an ephemeral high port. It's waiting for the final FIN to be sent from the application. If you look at the client application, it will print it, which then once it's done, it'll go out out of the try statement for the socket, which will then send the final FIN-ACK to the server. So let's go ahead and close that out. So you click OK here. And now notice that that session is now closed. So this is my presentation for the client and server socket, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.